Showing versus telling. During the last workshop I held, I got so many questions about how to actually do this, what it actually looks like when you're writing your narrative. Most people think that showing versus telling is just a better way to write a description, and that's true, but it's so much deeper than that. Today we're going to talk about what it is, why it's important, and how to do it. Stay tuned. Do you yearn to make your living from writing fiction? Do you struggle to finish your manuscript due to block, indecision, or lack of confidence in your story? Have you already published books that just aren't getting the sales you'd like? The truth is, the thing that really makes a difference in book sales is not currently being taught in the fiction author space. And it comes from the story level, not the marketing level. Real talk, if you don't get it right at the story level, no amount of awesome marketing is going to make your book a bestseller. Hi, I'm Liesl. I've got 20 fiction books, 4 genres, the USA Today bestseller accolade, and multiple award wins under my belt. So, obviously I've been around the block a few times. I have a lot of readers that follow me from genre to genre, even though conventional wisdom says that's rare. Why? Because my readers know that I know how to tell a story that's going to make them feel something. And if you can master that skill, you can write anything you want for the rest of your life and know it will be well received by readers. Which means better reviews, more gushing, more mega fans, and best of all, more royalties for you. Grab your fuzzy slippers and your chocolate of choice. I'm going to teach you how to emotionally engineer your story into the hearts and minds of your readers on purpose. Let's go. All right, guys, I've been a little bit MIA for the last 2 weeks. I apologize for that. The Christmas season just has me all in a twist. But I'm going to be doing something of a series. It'll probably just be 2, possibly 3 episodes on show versus tell, because like I said, I got a lot of questions about this during my last workshop. I hope everyone's having a wonderful holiday season. Now is the time not only to be grateful for everything we have and, do all of the fun things that we do during the holidays, but also to look forward to 2025. I think it's going to be a fantastic year, and this is a great time to set goals, decide what you want your writing to look like in the next year, what kind of time, what kind of dedication you're going to put toward it, and, how much you want to succeed, because you really do get to decide what kind of success you want to see in 2025. So as the new year rolls toward us, I will probably do another episode as well on goal setting and getting organized for the new year, but it's just something that I want you to be thinking about, okay? So let's get into today's topic, showing versus telling. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a neuroscience lesson. I promise it will not be clunky, but here is the bottom line. So the question is, how do we go from knowing something as a conscious fact to actually feeling emotions about it? This is one of the reasons that fiction is so important, and it's been used to create emotion in people for centuries. I can attest to this specifically through the film Titanic. I remember growing up in grade school and reading about this ship, this cruise liner called the Titanic that sank, way before I was born. And I didn't really connect that emotionally with it. I remember reading about it and them saying it was this huge tragedy, a lot of people died, and I probably even thought, oh yeah, that's sad that a lot of people died there. But that was it. I didn't have a very emotional connection to it. Then the James Cameron film came out. And yes, there was the romance of it all. There was the DiCaprio of it all. I was like 14 when it came out. So I was one of those DiCaprio crazed teenage girls and all of that. But more importantly, that film put people in the experience of what it would have been like to be on the Titanic. And it did that so effectively that it became one of the most successful films of all time. Most people who watched that film, at least the first time, left in tears, right? And this is what is great about fiction, is that it gives people the experience of something rather than just the facts. You notice how things like encyclopedias never make the bestseller list? It's because they don't create emotion. They're just giving you straight, hard facts, nothing else behind it. And if you look back through the years, things like Uncle Tom's Cabin was used to do this, to put people in the experience of what it would be like to be a slave and to create compassion for these people so that they could change the world, what was going on, right? So back to the neuroscience of it, the fact of the matter is, when we have a 5-sense experience, what happens is that the information that is gathered and recorded by our 5 senses enrich the circuits of our brain around the fact that we already know. And the byproduct of that is emotion. All right. So let's say that you just tell me something about one of your characters. Bob was sad. Well, that's just a fact that I know. I'm not going to be connecting to it, at least not very deeply. Now, when I said Bob was sad, you may have noticed that something of a picture appeared in your mind. Our brains will do that. They will actually fill in images for us. And so you probably had a little bit of something there, but it was very small. It wasn't very specific, and it was just kind of there and gone, almost like the shadow of an image. Okay. And that shows you that your brain is trying to give you an emotional experience, but it's not able to do it because you don't have much that's coming from the five senses. You only have what I have told you. Okay, this is the telling we're always saying that you shouldn't do when you are writing your story. Telling is just not effective at creating emotion. Now, this is another point that's important to make. We assume that emotion is always big emotion, something that makes us cry, something that makes us laugh out loud, something that makes us really scared. Of course, that's all emotion, but you have to understand that when we have a five sensory experience of any kind, what it does is it becomes familiar to us. So we often hear the example of biting into a lemon, right? Somebody will say, okay, imagine you're biting into a lemon. Imagine you put it on your tongue. Imagine that tartness, that sourness. Imagine how it sort of makes your tongue curl. And pretty soon everyone's salivating, right? And that's because we've all bitten into a lemon before. We all know what that is. We know what a lemon tastes like. So we can identify with that experience. And what's happening is it's bringing that experience from memory to the forefront again. All right. And that is what creates emotion. So we don't think of the experience of biting into a lemon or even thinking about biting into a lemon as an emotional experience, but it actually is. Anytime we have an experience that involves the five senses, that is creating a level of emotion for us. So now I want you to think about that and really apply it to your writing. If you want to create emotion with every single sentence that you write, every single description that you put into your story, you have to immerse the reader in a five senses experience. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't have to hit every single one of the five senses with every single line. Obviously, that would be a lot, it would be clunky, but you probably, anytime you describe something, need to hit at least one of them. I like to tell the people, the other authors in my critique group, help me visualize this. If you're just telling me he was walking down the street, I can't visualize what that looks like because it could be anything. Everybody walks differently. What is he doing? What does his posture look like? What does his body look like? What is he wearing? How is he holding his shoulders? Give me a five sensory experience. Help me visualize it, which yes, that is only the visual element. But when I say visualize, I really mean all of the five senses, right? Help me experience this, right? And that is really how we are going to show rather than tell. Showing isn't just about the visual, it's about the five sensory experience. Okay, so let's use an example with this. I just literally came up with this about 5 minutes ago. Let's say that you're writing a scene where a young boy, school age, is walking home from school, he gets bullied, and then he just goes home. And you are trying to drum up emotions in the reader of compassion for this boy, of feeling sad for him, of kind of empathy, just wanting to give him a hug. You want to really make this reader feel bad for this boy, okay? So this first line that I've written is how to tell us what happened. It's very simple. It doesn't give us a five sensory experience. I simply wrote, Jimmy was bullied. When he gets home, he sits on his front lawn and cries. I think you can all see that that is not really showing us much, right? I mean, it's a simple, straightforward, very conscious knowing of what happened. And like I said before, maybe your brain did come up with some very vague picture of what that might look like, because your brain will do that. Okay, but now I'm going to put in something else that I wrote that's going to be a lot more of the showing. And I want you to specifically pay attention to the five sense experience that I put in here, okay? Jimmy sat on the front lawn of his house, the dry grass scratching at his bare ankles. He pulled his knees into his chest and hung his head. Above, black clouds roiled, and the smell of wet dirt, a sign of coming rain, hung in the air. Tears rolled down over his cheeks, stinging the gaping cut the bully's metal ring had left on his cheek. Jimmy's shoulders shook with his sobs. Now, Could you make this paragraph better? I have no doubt that you could. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you can see all of the five senses that I've brought in. The scratching of the grass against his ankles. We're seeing what he's doing. He's pulling his knees into his chest. He's hanging his head. He's racked with sobs. We see his shoulders shaking, okay? The smell of wet dirt, that brings in smell. The tears rolling down over his cheeks. It actually makes a big difference to say that somebody cried versus describing what that crying actually looks like on them, okay? Two completely different things. About the only thing I didn't pull in here was taste. I could pull that in if I wanted to, but again, you don't need every single one of the five senses. You just need to touch on a few so that you are grounding the reader in the experience. You see what I mean? So in terms of how to show versus how to tell, you just have to ground the reader in that five senses experience. Again, you don't have to use all of the five senses every single time, but when you are writing a description, you need to stop and ask yourself, how can I show this? How can I show what it looks like? What will help the reader visualize it or experience it using one of the other five senses? If you do this every single time, you will never have a problem with telling versus showing, and you will never have boring writing, okay? That's what's most important. So that is how you show versus tell. That is why you should show versus tell. Remember, readers only read fiction in order to feel big emotions in a safe space. So every single thing you write, every line, every sentence, every scene, every bit of dialogue should evoke emotion. And that sounds like a really tall order because you're probably thinking of every single line I write has to make the reader cry or react in a big way. And that's not the case. The five senses experience will bring emotion to the reader. So if you can do that accurately, and there's plenty of other ways that I go through in my programs for how to do this, but if you can do that accurately, we're not talking about making your character cry or have some sort of major emotional outburst on every single page in order to keep the reader hooked. That's actually going to do the opposite, right? We're talking about figuring out how readers and human beings feel emotion and then harnessing that in our stories. And this is why you should show versus tell and how to do that in order to keep the reader gripped and reading. Okay? If you haven't yet, make sure and click the link down in the show notes to get my free mini course, 10 universal plot points for writing great fiction. I use those plot points to write absolutely everything that I craft. The mini course includes the PDF, a short video of me going through the PDF, and then also a link to my highest downloaded podcast of all time, which applies those plot points to planning a series rather than just a single book. So it's all free mini course. If you want it, it is down in the show notes below. Have a wonderful holiday season, everyone, and a wonderful week of writing. Thanks for listening today. If this episode helped or inspired you in any way, would you do me a solid and leave me a review? Reviews help other fiction authors find the podcast. You could also recommend it to a writer friend of yours so they can get the same inspiration you got. Remember, you have a story inside you that only you can tell. So get out there and write your soul story, because your readers are waiting for it with bated breath.